These weren't just banned, they were ultra banned. Cars so outrageous, so dangerous, or so out of control that they were pulled from the streets, erased from brochures, and buried by the very companies that built them. Some were too fast for their time, some broke laws, others broke physics, and yet they were real. Here are 12 ultra-banned American cars you won't believe ever existed until you see them for yourself. Number 1. The 1960 Plymouth Belvadier Golden Commando 395. Convertible is one of those near-mythical machines from the dawn of the muscle car era. A car born at the crossroads of brute force and 1950s optimism, but undone by physics, miscalculation, and a trail of twisted sheet metal. It was a fire-breathing missile wrapped in the soft curves of a full-size cruiser, and for a brief moment, it promised to be one of the wildest open-top Plymouths ever built. Then, as fast as it arrived, it disappeared, yanked from production mid-year, quietly buried, and largely forgotten by history. In 1960, the Belvadier sat in a strange spot in Plymouth's lineup. Not quite a luxury car, not quite a true performance machine. It was flashy, full-sized, and stylish, riding on the final echoes of Virgil Exner's forward-look designs. But deep within Plymouth's options list lurked a sleeping giant, the Golden Commando 395. Despite its misleading name, this engine wasn't a 395 cubic inch block. It was Plymouth's top-tier 383 V8, outfitted with a Wildcam, dual 4-barrel carburetors, and tuned to produce a brutal 350-plus horsepower. When ordered in a Belvadier two-door hardtop or coupe, the Golden Commando 395 made sense. Big engine, stiff frame, decent weight distribution. But someone somewhere, maybe a daring product planner, maybe a dealer with friends in high places, approved a handful of convertibles with the full performance package. These topless land missiles were breathtakingly fast for their size, capable of outrunning many factory hot rods of the time. They were meant to cruise with class and leave everything else in their dust. Unfortunately, things went wrong almost immediately. The Belvadier convertible's chassis, already long and flex-prone due to its full-size proportions, simply wasn't up to the task of harnessing that much torque. Without a hard roof to reinforce structural rigidity, the body would twist under hard acceleration. Suspension components couldn't keep the rear wheels planted, especially on uneven roads, and handling quickly deteriorated at speed. Worse still, braking systems hadn't been upgraded to match the newfound horsepower, a terrifying oversight in a 4,200-pound convertible. Insurance companies began to take notice when reports of crashes started piling up. Owners, often young, drawn to the car's speed and flamboyant styling, found themselves behind the wheel of something that looked like a cruiser but accelerated like a missile and handled like a waterbed. Several violent wrecks, some of them fatal, led to mounting pressure on Plymouth to pull the configuration. Internally, engineers were already aware of the structural limitations, and under pressure from both insurers and legal advisors, Plymouth yanked the Golden Commando 395 option from the convertible mid-year. No official explanation was ever given. Production records are murky, but estimates suggest fewer than a dozen of these convertibles were ever built, perhaps as few as 6. Most were either wrecked or quietly traded away by dealers nervous about their liabilities. Today, only a tiny handful are rumored to survive, usually in heavily modified form, with reinforced frames and upgraded brakes, the way they should have been built in the first place. A former Plymouth test driver, when asked about the car years later, reportedly said, "It had the heart of a racehorse and the body of a bathtub. You never knew if it would roar or roll over. We warned them it was too much, but they built it anyway." In many ways, the 1960 Belvadier Golden Commando convertible was a muscle car before the term existed. A full-sized, overpowered rear-drive monster with style to match its fury. But its downfall was a lesson in balance. All that power meant nothing if the frame couldn't carry it, and no amount of chrome could keep it on the road. It was a beautiful mistake, one that proved you can, in fact, be too fast for your own frame. Too fast for its frame and too fragile to sell. Number 2, the 1957 Nash Ambassador V8 twin-stick experimental stands as one of the strangest and most fascinating oddities in the twilight years of the Nash brand, a car caught between ambition and bewildering failure. At a time when American automakers were racing to capture buyer attention with flashy new features and mechanical wizardry, Nash engineers dared to experiment with a radical transmission concept that pushed the limits of complexity and disastrously missed the mark. It was a vision born from a desire to modernize and innovate, yet it became a nightmare of confusion, breakdowns, and corporate embarrassment that contributed to Nash's fading legacy just before it was swallowed by American Motors Corporation. The mid-1950s was a tumultuous period for Nash. Having carved a niche as a maker of reliable, economical cars with advanced engineering, the company struggled to keep pace with the Big Three's deep pockets and growing performance muscle. To compete, Nash needed not just power but bold features. Enter the Packard-sourced 352 cubic inch V8, a large, torquey engine that gave the 1957 Ambassador a respectable performance edge. But the heart alone wasn't enough. Nash's engineering team envisioned a new kind of transmission, something that bridged the gap between traditional manuals and automatics, promising a smoother, more efficient driving experience that could appeal to both enthusiasts and everyday drivers. Their solution was the infamous twin-stick transmission, an experimental semi-automatic setup with 2 separate shifters. One lever controlled the high and low ranges, akin to a transfer case, while the other selected gears in a manual-like fashion. The concept was to give drivers more control over shifting without the physical demands of a clutch pedal, theoretically improving fuel economy and offering engine braking options. In theory, it was ingenious, forward-thinking, and uniquely Nash. But in reality, it was a mechanical and human disaster. Drivers found themselves bewildered by the twin levers, unsure which to move first, where to place each for smooth acceleration, and how to downshift without stalling. The system demanded an almost ritualistic sequence of movements, timing, and judgment that frustrated even seasoned drivers. Unlike modern automated manuals or dual-clutch systems, this setup offered no electronic assistance or clear guidance, just mechanical linkages prone to misalignment and user error. Testers quickly discovered the system's fragility. The transmission's linkages were delicate, with rods and cables prone to bending, binding, or outright failure under typical road stress. Public demonstrations went poorly. Journalists and dealers reported frequent stalls, failure to shift into drive, or the car inexplicably locking into neutral. There were even stories of vehicles losing power mid-acceleration on highways, forcing emergency stops and creating dangerous situations. Worst of all, the complicated setup resulted in several breakdowns during early sales events and promotional tours, embarrassing the company and sowing doubt among consumers. Internally, the problems were compounded by a lack of corporate support. American Motors executives, freshly merged with Nash, were skeptical of this mechanical oddity and hesitant to invest further in a system so prone to failure. The marketing department found it nearly impossible to explain the twin sticks operation to prospective buyers, who often walked away confused or outright scared. Mechanically, the complexity increased service costs and required specialized training, making dealerships reluctant to stock the car or recommend the option. Under mounting pressure from sales, reliability concerns, and a flood of negative feedback, AMC pulled the plug on the twin-stick transmission by the end of 1957. The experimental Ambassadors equipped with the setup were recalled or converted back to conventional automatics or manuals, and most of the prototype cars were scrapped or stripped for parts. The entire project was swept under the corporate rug, with AMC executives publicly distancing themselves from the debacle to preserve Nash's remaining reputation. Years later, some of the engineers involved described the project with a mix of frustration and disbelief. One veteran mechanic famously dubbed it the suicide gearbox because of the unpredictable and often baffling behavior of the shifting mechanism. Another recalled, "You never knew what gear you were in. Sometimes you thought you were in drive, but the car was actually coasting in neutral. It was like trying to solve a puzzle every time you drove it." Today, no known original 1957 Nash Ambassador twin-stick models survive, though whispers and rumors persist of one or two examples hidden in barns or forgotten collections. For collectors and historians, it remains a fascinating footnote, a rare glimpse into an era when American automakers were willing. Number 3. The 1970 Ford Torino Talladega Super Cobra Jet is one of those rare, almost mythical muscle cars that perfectly captures the high-stakes, high-speed drama of the golden age of American racing. A car designed in the crucible of NASCAR's fiercest battles, but ultimately deemed too extreme, too dangerous, and too wild for the streets it was supposed to rule. It represents the sharp edge where race-bred technology meets the limits of public road practicality. A story of power, precision, and politics that ended with the car being quietly pulled from showrooms before it could truly shine outside the track. The Talladega itself was Ford's answer to the aerodynamic challenges posed by Dodge's Daytona and Plymouth Superbird, cars with radical nose cones and tail spoilers designed specifically to dominate NASCAR's superspeedways. Ford's solution was the Torino Talladega, whose dramatically reshaped front end reduced drag and improved high-speed stability to such a degree that it earned an instant reputation as a rocket ship on wheels. But while the bodywork was revolutionary, it was the heart under the hood that really set this machine apart. The mighty 429 cubic inch Super Cobra Jet V8 engine. The 429 SCJ was not just any big block. It was a race-bred powerhouse engineered to deliver ferocious torque and horsepower across the rev range. With forged internals, a radical camshaft profile, and a massive Holley 4-barrel carburetor, this engine pumped out factory-rated 375 horsepower. Though enthusiasts believed it was actually far more potent, the SCJ's raw power combined with the Talladega's aerodynamic body promised blistering straight-line speed and enough muscle to smoke nearly any challenger on the drag strip or superspeedway. However, this marriage of muscle and aero was a double-edged sword. The aerodynamic modifications that made the Talladega lethal at 200 mph on the track introduced unsettling handling characteristics when driven at high speed on the street. The long, low nose and the specially tuned suspension worked perfectly with race-grade tires and smooth bank turns. But on public roads, with uneven pavement, unpredictable conditions, and conventional tires, the car developed a dangerous tendency to become unstable. Drivers reported high-speed wobble, twitchy steering, and unpredictable understeer, especially when pushing beyond 100 mph. The car's chassis and suspension setup, optimized for race conditions, was not forgiving to average drivers or street use. These handling issues, coupled with the era's escalating insurance premiums and a growing backlash against high-performance muscle cars, spelled doom for the Torino Talladega SCJ's street career. Insurance companies, already wary of cars with high horsepower and limited safety features, were quick to classify the Talladega SCJ as a high-risk vehicle, driving premiums into prohibitive territory. Dealers found it nearly impossible to sell these cars, and Ford faced mounting pressure from insurers, safety regulators, and cautious executives worried about potential liabilities. Despite initial plans to homologate the Talladega SCJ as a street car to meet NASCAR rules, Ford quietly ended production after building only a small batch, fewer than 70 units by most estimates. Rather than aggressively marketing the car to the public, Ford relegated it to a niche status, effectively banning it from the streets through corporate silence and logistical neglect. The Talladega SCJ became a tool for the racetrack and little else, a purebred racing weapon too specialized and unpredictable for everyday drivers. Behind the scenes, internal memos reveal that Ford engineers recognized the handling issues early, but were overruled by marketing and racing priorities. One engineer reflected years later, saying, "We built a missile for Daytona and Talladega, a car that could fly over banking at insane speeds. But when we tried to let it loose on the street, it was like handing a loaded bazooka to a kid, thrilling but deadly." The combination of extreme aero and massive power demanded respect and skill, luxuries few buyers possessed. Today, surviving examples of the 1970 Torino Talladega Super Cobra Jet are prized collector's gems, symbols of an era when manufacturers pushed the envelope to the brink and sometimes beyond. They remind enthusiasts of the raw, unfiltered passion of muscle car racing's early 1970s heyday, and of a time when a few dozen cars were built to outpace anything on the road or track, only to be reined in by the realities of street safety and insurance red tape. The Talladega SCJ's story is a potent lesson in the perils of pushing technology too far without compromise. It was a breathtaking expression of NASCAR technology, speed, and ambition, but a car that was simply too much, too unstable, too expensive to insure, and too specialized to ever truly succeed outside the racetrack. Number 4, the 1965 Chrysler 300L Ramcharger package is one of those bold, almost reckless experiments where luxury met raw muscle in a way that few American automakers dared to try, and fewer still managed to pull off. At its core, the 300L was Chrysler's epitome of upscale performance, a large, elegant sedan wrapped in plush leather and trimmed with all the bells and whistles a discerning buyer might expect. But beneath the refined exterior lurked a brutal secret: the Ramcharger 426 Max Wedge, a legendary high-performance engine built for drag strips, not drawing rooms. In 1965, Chrysler was pushing the envelope with its Max Wedge engines, turbocharged and highly tuned to produce ferocious power. The Ramcharger variant, with its high-lift camshaft, dual 4-barrel carburetors, and reinforced internals, was capable of launching lightweight drag cars deep into the 11-second quarter-mile range, blistering times that put it firmly in the territory of dedicated muscle machines. Somewhere in Chrysler's experimental labs, someone had the audacious idea to pair this brutal power plant with the posh 300L, creating a hybrid that was part luxury cruiser, part drag strip missile. The intent was clear: offer customers a unique combination of comfort and performance, a car that could silently ferry them to gala events and then annihilate stoplight challengers without breaking a sweat. But this marriage of extremes quickly proved volatile. The 300L's chassis and drivetrain simply weren't built for this level of brute force. The sheer torque and power of the 426 Max Wedge overwhelmed the drivetrain components, leading to frequent failures in the transmission, drive shaft, and rear differential. These mechanical breakdowns were not minor inconveniences. They happened unexpectedly and often catastrophically, sometimes causing loss of control at high speeds. The heavy weight of the 300L's luxury appointments added further strain, compounding the stress on an already overtaxed system. On the customer side, reactions were mixed, but often negative. While some were thrilled to own a car that could effortlessly out-drag dedicated muscle cars, many were unsettled by the disconnect between the car's elegant appearance and its ferocious personality. The juxtaposition of fine leather interiors with the raw aggression of a Max Wedge engine was too jarring for many traditional luxury buyers, who found the car's behavior unpredictable and at times downright frightening. The situation escalated when a handful of drivetrain failures led to serious accidents, prompting lawsuits and insurance claims that rattled Chrysler's legal department. Two high-profile lawsuits involving loss of control incidents attributed directly to mechanical failures linked to the Ramcharger package put the final nail in the coffin for the experiment. Faced with the dual pressures of legal risk and poor market reception, Chrysler shelved the Ramcharger 300L after a very limited run. Official records suggest only a few dozen were built before the program was quietly canceled, with many prototypes and pre-production models destroyed or converted back to standard 300Ls. One Chrysler engineer involved in the project later recalled, "It was a sledgehammer in a tuxedo. Nobody knew what to make of it. The power was insane, but the car wasn't ready for that kind of muscle. We pushed it too far, and the fallout was inevitable." Today, the 1965 Chrysler 300L Ramcharger package is a whispered legend, a rare and almost mythical beast that married opulence and raw speed but paid a heavy price. It serves as a cautionary tale of how even the finest luxury can't always tame pure horsepower. It was a sledgehammer in a tuxedo. Number 5. The 1959 Pontiac Catalina TriPower wagon stands as one of the most fascinating and unusual experiments in American automotive history, a daring fusion of family practicality and raw, unfiltered muscle car performance. At a time when wagons were synonymous with suburban errands, grocery runs, and ferrying kids to school, Pontiac dared to shake things up by grafting a ferocious TriPower 389 V8 under the hood of a station wagon. The result was a machine that defied convention, a vehicle that could haul the whole family comfortably, yet sprint with the fury of a dedicated muscle car. But beneath this thrilling promise lurked a complex story of mechanical overreach, safety concerns, and an ultimate retreat from the edge. In 1959, Pontiac was riding high on a wave of performance success. The TriPower setup, a trio of two-barrel carburetors feeding a 389 cubic inch V8, had become a legend in its own right. It was a proven recipe for horsepower and torque, giving sedans like the Catalina Coupe explosive acceleration and a throaty growl that made muscle car enthusiasts' hearts race. But the idea of transplanting that powertrain into a full-size wagon was audacious, even reckless by the standards of the day. The station wagon was a heavy beast, designed primarily for comfort, space, and utility, rather than speed or cornering prowess. Its long roofline, generous rear cargo area, and accommodating interior made it a staple of American family life. But it also meant substantial weight and less than ideal weight distribution for a high-performance car. Nevertheless, Pontiac engineers were convinced that the TriPower wagon could offer the best of both worlds. Practical muscle. Early prototypes were tested vigorously, and on paper, the numbers were impressive. The TriPower 389 V8, with its 3 carburetors and aggressive camshaft profile, delivered a healthy bump in horsepower over the standard setup, cranking out around 310 to 320 HP. A monstrous figure for a family wagon. The car could sprint from 0 to 60 miles per hour in well under 8 seconds, and it pulled hard in every gear, leaving many muscle sedans and even some sports cars in the dust. The exhaust note was unmistakable, deep, aggressive, and utterly thrilling. However, as spirited road testing progressed, the limitations of the wagon's platform quickly became apparent. The heavy frame and body meant the brakes were perpetually fighting an uphill battle. Drum brakes, standard on most American cars at the time, were simply not up to the task of slowing down this rocket ship wagon safely and consistently. On longer or more aggressive drives, brake fade became a serious hazard, with stopping distances stretching beyond reasonable limits. This was an early example of muscle car performance outpacing safety technology, a problem the industry as a whole struggled with during this era. Even more alarming were the problems with the rear suspension and axle. The torque generated by the TriPower 389 was brutal, especially in a car weighing nearly 4,000 pounds. The heavy load on the rear end, combined with the powerful engine's sudden bursts of acceleration, stressed the axle housing and leaf springs beyond their design limits. Early customer reports described unsettling noises coming from the rear, handling quirks during cornering, and, in some cases, catastrophic axle failures. There were incidents where the rear axle had fractured or broken entirely, resulting in loss of control, sometimes with disastrous consequences. Pontiac's warranty and service departments began receiving a growing number of complaints and repair requests related to these issues. The mounting evidence was impossible to ignore. Internally, engineers and executives debated the future of the TriPower wagon. While the performance potential was undeniable and the car drew attention wherever it went, the risks to driver safety and the costs of repairs were becoming liabilities. Insurance companies also began flagging the vehicle as a high-risk model, raising premiums and deterring potential buyers. By late 1959, Pontiac made the difficult decision to cancel the TriPower wagon option. Without a formal announcement, the option disappeared from sales literature and dealer order forms. Remaining wagons equipped with the package were recalled or retrofitted with more conventional engines and braking components. Production numbers remain unclear, but estimates suggest fewer than 200 TriPower wagons ever left the factory. This episode left a lasting mark on Pontiac's legacy. The 1959 Catalina TriPower wagon became a cautionary tale, an ambitious but ultimately flawed attempt to blend muscle car excitement with family practicality too early and without sufficient engineering support. It also foreshadowed the muscle wagon craze that would take off a decade later, once brakes, suspensions, and chassis technology had advanced enough to safely manage such power. Number 6. The 1962 Dodge Custom 8.8 Auto 413 Cross Ram stands as a remarkable, if ill-fated, testament to an era of American automotive ambition, where muscle and luxury collided in ways that often defied engineering logic. At a time when manufacturers were experimenting to carve out unique niches in an increasingly competitive market, Dodge sought to push boundaries by combining the refined, roomy comfort of its full-size custom 880 sedan with the raw power and aggressive performance of its mighty 413 cubic inch V8, fitted with the distinctive cross-ram intake manifold designed to maximize high RPM airflow and horsepower. The goal was to create a flagship luxury performance cruiser that could comfortably carry passengers while blasting down the highway with muscle car authority. Yet beneath this bold vision lurked a series of challenges and compromises that would ultimately doom the project, making it a fascinating story of mechanical creativity, reckless experimentation, and harsh reality. The 413 V8 itself was a potent power plant, widely praised for its torque and performance characteristics. The cross-ram induction setup was a particular highlight, featuring long, sweeping intake runners that forced air and fuel deep into the combustion chambers to generate substantial horsepower gains at higher engine speeds. While this design delivered thrilling power surges and exhilarating acceleration, it came with a large physical footprint that complicated installation in the engine bay of the relatively traditional Custom 880. Fitting the 413 Cross Ram under the Custom 880's hood required drastic and risky modifications. The standard engine bay simply wasn't built to accommodate the sprawling intake manifold's unusual shape and length. Dodge's engineers were forced to rework the hood, shaving and reshaping it to create just enough clearance to prevent direct contact with the manifold. The firewall and surrounding components had to be altered, sometimes at the expense of structural rigidity and durability. These changes created a cramped, hot environment, putting additional thermal stress on engine components and increasing the risk of heat-related failures. Test drives and early customer feedback highlighted several troubling issues. The throttle response was aggressive to a fault. Instead of a smooth power delivery befitting a luxury sedan, the engine's sudden torque surges made for jerky acceleration and unpredictable handling in everyday driving scenarios. The car's heavy weight, combined with the engine's explosive bursts of power, challenged drivers accustomed to the gentler ride and manageable performance expected from the Custom 880. Worst of all, the cramped, overheated engine bay eventually sparked a serious safety incident. During a particularly intense test session, the excessive heat buildup and restricted airflow ignited fuel vapors, or hot components, causing an underhood fire. Although the blaze was contained quickly and nobody was injured, the event raised immediate red flags. Corporate decision-makers were forced to confront the reality that the design compromises necessary to shoehorn the powerful 413 Cross Ram into the Custom 880 came at unacceptable risks to reliability and safety. Faced with the potential for catastrophic failure, the growing cost of warranty repairs, and the likely negative impact on the Dodge brand's reputation, executives made the prudent but disappointing decision to terminate the 413 Cross Ram Custom 880 program. Only a handful of test cars had been built before the entire project was quietly shelved, with most examples dismantled or converted to more conventional powertrains. Dealers who had hoped to offer an upscale muscle sedan were left empty-handed, and Dodge turned its focus toward refining more practical engine and chassis combinations for its full-size lineup. Inside the company, engineers looked back on the project with a mixture of pride for their ambition and frustration at the technical hurdles. One veteran mechanic recalled, "We had a monster under the hood, but the car just wasn't ready for it. The hood barely cleared the intake, and when the fire happened, that was the end of it. It was a lesson in how power needs space and respect." Today, the 1962 Dodge Custom 880 413 Cross Ram exists primarily as a footnote in muscle car history, a fascinating what-if that symbolizes both the daring innovation and the engineering limits of its time. It serves as a reminder that even the most potent engines and bold ideas must be married carefully to the platform beneath them, or face being relegated to the scrap heap of automotive experiments. The engine barely fit and nearly caught fire trying. Number 7. The 1971 Chevrolet Chevel 454 Black Ops Police Unit remains one of the most fascinating and tumultuous episodes in muscle car and law enforcement history. A vivid illustration of the high-octane ambitions that once drove American automakers and police agencies alike, and the harsh realities that brought those dreams crashing down. At a time when muscle cars reigned supreme on the streets and highways, Chevrolet saw an opportunity to create a pursuit vehicle unlike any before. A covert, high-performance sedan powered by the formidable 454 cubic-inch LS5 big block engine. This car was meant to give law enforcement officers a decisive advantage in the escalating arms race between police and increasingly daring criminals. Yet, despite the raw power and speed, the project's rapid rise was matched only by its abrupt fall, revealing the complex balance between speed, safety, and cost. The genesis of the Black Ops Chevel program came amid growing concerns from police departments nationwide that their standard pursuit vehicles simply couldn't keep up with the fast, modified muscle cars criminals were using to evade capture. Chevrolet answered this call with a specially equipped Chevel designed to look unassuming and blend in seamlessly with civilian traffic, a crucial feature for undercover work and surprise pursuits. Underneath this stealthy guise, however, lurked the heart of a beast, the LS5 454 V8 engine, producing an estimated 360 to 370 horsepower and a staggering 500 blow-heft of torque, delivering muscle car performance that few fleet vehicles could match. Beyond the powertrain, these cars were outfitted with police-spec heavy-duty suspensions, reinforced brakes capable of repeated high-speed stops, and performance tires to handle the increased stresses of pursuit driving. The transmissions were beefed up and cooling systems were enhanced to keep the engine and drivetrain stable during prolonged high-speed runs. The cars were stripped of unnecessary weight, but retained enough interior comfort to serve as practical patrol vehicles. This combination made the Chevel 454 both a rocket on wheels and a capable police cruiser, a rare and exciting hybrid. Officers who drove the Chevel Black Ops units quickly became enamored with their capabilities. They described the experience as transformative, with acceleration that could outgun most suspects' vehicles and handling sharp enough to keep pace through twists and turns. The car's stealthy appearance allowed cops to maintain the element of surprise, a significant tactical advantage in the field. For many, the Chevel was not just a tool, but a symbol of power and control, a means to close the gap between law enforcement and the growing horsepower competition on the streets. Yet, the very features that made the Chevel 454 a high-performance marvel also sowed the seeds of its downfall. The enormous torque and horsepower stressed every component of the drivetrain and chassis to their limits. Transmissions wore out faster, differentials strained under the load, and brake systems, despite upgrades, needed constant maintenance due to the demands of frequent high-speed stops. Police mechanics faced a grueling cycle of repairs and rebuilds that quickly drained budgets and manpower. More troubling, however, were the safety concerns that arose as a result of the car's raw power and mass. The Chevel was a heavy sedan, and at the speeds officers pushed it, handling could become unpredictable, especially in urban or less than ideal road conditions. Reports of high-speed accidents involving the Chevel unit surfaced, including 2 serious crashes that resulted in totaled vehicles and injuries. These incidents raised alarm among police leadership and municipal officials who worried about the liability and public relations fallout. The combination of skyrocketing maintenance costs, growing accident reports, and pressure from city councils led to internal debates over the program's viability. Chevrolet faced mounting criticism for providing a vehicle that was arguably too powerful and expensive for routine police work. Insurance premiums soared, and legal teams cautioned departments against the risks of continuing to deploy such potent machinery in everyday patrol scenarios. Ultimately, the program was quietly wound down by the end of 1972. Black Ops Chevels were phased out in favor of more conventional police cars that sacrificed raw power for reliability, cost-effectiveness, and safer handling characteristics. The decision left many officers disappointed, as the Chevel 454 had set a new standard for what a pursuit vehicle could be: fast, intimidating, and capable of dominating the streets. veteran patrol officers recall the Chevel with a mix of pride and nostalgia. One remarked, "That car was a beast. We could outrun almost anything, but it wasn't built for the long haul. Constant repairs and the risks made it a white elephant." Number 8. The 1964 Lincoln Continental Coupe 430 dual quad stands as one of the most intriguing and often overlooked chapters in the annals of American automotive history. A vivid case study in the collision between raw muscle car performance and the established ethos of refined luxury. At a time when the muscle car phenomenon was reshaping the landscape of American driving culture and horsepower was becoming the ultimate measure of automotive prowess, Lincoln Ford's flagship luxury division found itself at a crossroads. Could the brand, famous for its stately elegance, imposing presence, and whisper-quiet V8 engines, stretch its identity to embrace a high-performance muscle car mentality? The short-lived 430 dual quad experiment answered that question with a definitive, if reluctant, no. But the story behind this brief flirtation with power reveals much about the tensions and trade-offs of the era. The roots of this experiment trace back to the early 1960s, a period when muscle cars were exploding in popularity. Across Detroit, performance cars from GM, Chrysler, and Ford's more mainstream divisions were delivering thrilling speed, bold styling, and aggressive exhaust notes that captured the imagination of younger buyers. Lincoln, by contrast, cultivated an image of sophistication and wealth, big, comfortable, and quiet, appealing primarily to a clientele that prized comfort and prestige over acceleration times or engine roar. Yet, within Lincoln's engineering teams, there was curiosity about whether a more potent, aggressive powertrain could be married with the brand's iconic Continental Coupe to create a new kind of luxury performance machine. The project centered around the 430 cubic inch V8, which was among Ford's largest and most powerful engines at the time. Lincoln engineers fitted this engine with dual 4-barrel carburetors, famously called dual quads, a setup known to dramatically improve air and fuel delivery to the combustion chambers, yielding a significant horsepower boost. The theoretical outcome was a Continental Coupe that could accelerate more swiftly and assert itself with muscle car bravado while still retaining the spaciousness and comfort Lincoln buyers expected. Physically, the engine was enormous, and fitting it under the Continental's already spacious hood required considerable re-engineering. The dual quad intake system was bulky and complex, occupying much of the engine bay and complicating maintenance. But these mechanical challenges paled in comparison to the cultural and brand image issues the new powertrain presented. When the prototypes were completed and brought out for testing, their performance was undeniable. The thunderous rumble of the dual quad 430 V8 shattered the usual quiet ambiance of Lincoln interiors, surprising drivers and passengers accustomed to hushed luxury. Acceleration times improved noticeably, and the car could easily keep pace with lighter muscle cars on the highway, lending the massive Continental an aggressive new character. However, the engine's throaty growl and raw power felt discordant with the vehicle's formal lines, restrained styling, and cushioned suspension. Executives at Lincoln and Ford quickly grew uneasy. The car, in its muscular new form, was too loud to wear a three-piece suit, as one senior executive reportedly remarked, a quip that perfectly captured the fundamental mismatch between the powertrain and the brand's cultivated identity. There were fears that offering such an aggressive engine would alienate Lincoln's traditional customer base, wealthy, conservative buyers who expected their sedans to provide serene comfort, not the visceral thrill and noise of a muscle car. Moreover, the Continental's suspension and braking systems were not designed to handle the stresses of this new high-output engine, raising questions about safety, reliability, and ride quality. Within weeks of unveiling the prototypes internally, Lincoln made the quiet decision to scrap the 430 dual quad project. The dual quad engines were removed or detuned, and the cars reverted to more conventional V8s with single carburetors that emphasized smoothness over raw power. The prototypes themselves disappeared into corporate archives, their existence known only to a few insiders and collectors. The fallout of the project reinforced the strict boundaries automakers placed between their luxury and performance divisions during the 1960s. Lincoln doubled down on the quiet, powerful, but subdued V8s that defined its image for decades. leaving high-performance pursuits to brands like Ford's Mustang or Mercury's Cougar. The 430 dual quad experiment, while brief and largely forgotten, remains a fascinating snapshot of a time when muscle car culture was expanding rapidly, but had yet to fully permeate the most exclusive tiers of American automotive luxury. Those who worked on the project remember it as both exciting and frustrating. Number 9, the 1955 Hudson Hornet V8 NASCAR prototype occupies a unique, almost mythical place in the storied history of American stock car racing, a fascinating, bittersweet tale of innovation, defiance, and the harsh realities of racing regulations that abruptly clipped the wings of one of the boldest engineering gambles of the era. At a time when NASCAR was evolving rapidly and muscle was beginning to overshadow handling and finesse, Hudson's once dominant Hornet was feeling the crushing weight of competition from Detroit's muscle-laden warhorses. In response, a secretive group of Hudson engineers and racing enthusiasts embarked on an audacious project, transplanting a massive Packard V8 engine into the compact and nimble Hornet chassis, hoping to create a machine that combined the best of both worlds: torque and power from Packard's legendary big block and the Hornet's lightweight, aerodynamic frame. This wasn't a mere engine swap. It was an engineering tightrope walk that pushed the limits of design, packaging, and automotive cooperation. Packard's V8 was a powerhouse, renowned for smoothness and displacement, but physically large and heavy. Fitting it into the Hornet's relatively cramped engine bay required significant modifications, reshaping engine mounts, reinforcing the chassis, and altering suspension components to compensate for the altered weight distribution. Yet, the team was relentless, driven by the dream of reclaiming Hudson's fading dominance in NASCAR. Once assembled, the Packard-powered Hornet prototypes were put through grueling private tests on dirt and paved ovals, where they immediately demonstrated staggering performance gains. The cars accelerated harder out of turns, maintained higher top speeds on the straights, and retained the Hornet's famed agility. Drivers reported a near-perfect balance between brute force and handling precision, a combination rare in that era. This machine was not just competitive, it was revolutionary, threatening to disrupt NASCAR's power hierarchy. But the dream collided headlong with the brutal realities of NASCAR's homologation rules. NASCAR mandated that race cars be true stock vehicles, reflecting what was available in showrooms to ordinary consumers. Moreover, the combination of a Hudson chassis with a Packard engine was strictly forbidden. These were two competing brands under different corporate umbrellas, and their parts could not be legally mixed in competition. Despite the undeniable performance advantage, NASCAR officials declared the Hudson-Packard hybrid illegal and barred it from racing. This ruling was a crushing blow. For Hudson, already fighting to stay relevant amid the muscle car explosion, the loss of this secret weapon was a bitter setback. The automaker quietly pulled the prototypes from the racing scene, scrapped further development, and returned to relying on more conventional and less competitive powertrains. The Packard-powered Hornet became an underground legend among enthusiasts, a tantalizing what-if scenario that could have rewritten NASCAR history. Historians and racing fans have long speculated on the impact the car might have had if allowed to compete. Its combination of power and nimble handling might have disrupted the dominance of Chrysler, Ford, and Chevrolet at a pivotal moment. Yet, the story is also a cautionary tale of how regulations and corporate politics can stifle innovation. The 1955 Hudson Hornet V8 NASCAR prototype is remembered not just for what it was, but for what it never got to become. A game-changing contender robbed of its chance to prove itself on America's racetracks. One engineer involved in the project reflected decades later, "We built a car that could win it all, but the rules said no. Sometimes the best ideas get killed before the green flag even drops." Today, this forbidden hybrid remains a ghost in racing lore, an emblem of brilliant engineering ambition, fierce competitive spirit, and the harsh limits imposed by the business of motorsport. Built to win, banned before it could try. Number 10. The 1972 Dodge Demon 440 six-pack project remains one of the most tantalizing what-if stories of the muscle car era. A tale steeped in raw ambition, technical audacity, and the sobering realities of automotive engineering limits and corporate caution. Dodge was riding high in the early 1970s, having carved out a fierce reputation with its high-performance Mopar muscle machines, Chargers, Challengers, and the diminutive Demon, a compact yet aggressive competitor in the pony car wars. But the automaker's engineers and marketing team wanted to push the envelope even further, envisioning a version of the Demon that could deliver the kind of blistering straight-line speed and explosive throttle response typically reserved for much larger muscle cars. At the heart of this ambitious plan was the 440 six-pack engine, a monstrous 440 cubic inch V8 fitted with 3 two-barrel Holley carburetors, a configuration that had earned a fearsome reputation for delivering explosive power and torque. This engine was a giant among muscle car power plants, revered for its ability to launch cars down drag strips with brutal authority. Dodge's idea was to transplant this legendary big block power plant into the smaller, lighter Demon platform, effectively creating a compact muscle car with the heart of a monster. If successful, the Dodge Demon 440 six-pack would have been a game-changer, combining nimble handling with devastating power in a way few cars at the time could match. But from the outset, the project was rife with challenges that foreshadowed its doom. The sheer size and weight of the 440 six-pack engine made installation in the Demon's shorter engine bay a logistical nightmare. Engineers had to modify and reinforce the frame, redesign the engine mounts, and rework the suspension to handle the increased mass perched over the front wheels. The changes disrupted the car's delicate balance, causing the front end to become heavily nose-biased, which led to unpredictable handling characteristics. During high-speed testing, drivers reported severe understeer, nosedives under hard braking, and a propensity to snap loose in corners, traits that made the car dangerous on public roads and challenging even for skilled racers. As the test fleet of these hybrid Demons accumulated miles and experience, the project's flaws became impossible to ignore. While the acceleration and power delivery were nothing short of spectacular, the overall driving experience was marred by the car's instability. The heavy front end strained the steering and suspension components, leading to increased wear and frequent failures. Moreover, the powerful torque made controlling wheel spin and traction difficult without advanced electronic aids, which were decades away from being available. This meant that the car demanded constant vigilance behind the wheel, a risky proposition for the average driver. Meanwhile, behind closed doors, Dodge's legal and insurance departments grew increasingly alarmed. The liability risks of releasing a production vehicle with such volatile handling and a tendency to overwhelm its own chassis were staggering. Insurers threatened prohibitive premium hikes or outright refusal to cover the cars, and company lawyers warned that the combination could lead to a spate of costly lawsuits if the car were ever sold to the public. With the muscle car market already under pressure from tightening emissions and insurance regulations, Dodge executives faced a difficult decision. The project was abruptly halted, and all known prototypes were recalled and dismantled to avoid leaks. Engineers who had worked on the Demon 440 six-pack were sworn to secrecy, and the program faded into automotive lore, whispered about in enthusiast circles but never officially acknowledged. Those lucky few who got behind the wheel in testing remembered a car that was both thrilling and terrifying, a true wolf in sheep's clothing, packing a massive punch but demanding respect and skill to tame. Reflecting on the project years later, one engineer quipped, "It launched hard and launched its warranty with it." The phrase encapsulates the project's essence perfectly. Raw power unchecked by suitable engineering balance, resulting in a thrilling but ultimately untenable muscle car. Today, the 1972 Dodge Demon 440 six-pack stands as a ghostly reminder of the muscle car era's wildest dreams and harshest realities. It represents an intoxicating mix of engineering bravado and corporate prudence, a glimpse of power that was simply too much for its own good. In the pantheon of forbidden muscle cars, it holds a special place, a potent myth of speed, danger, and the limits of ambition. It launched hard and launched its warranty with it. Number 11, the 1966 American Motors Marlin 343 Typhoon project stands as a remarkable yet little-known episode in the broader saga of the muscle car era, a time when even the most unlikely automakers sought to capture the lightning of high performance American muscle. AMC, a company better known for its sensible, economy-minded vehicles, took a daring step by attempting to blend the emerging muscle car craze with the Marlin, a personal luxury fastback coupe that was already an unusual polarizing machine in its own right. The Marlin was conceived to offer stylish, distinctive design and a comfortable, upscale driving experience at a time when many American buyers were shifting their attention to sleek, sporty two-door cars. Yet AMC, recognizing the market's growing appetite for power and speed, explored a more aggressive path, seeking to equip the Marlin with a potent 343 cubic inch V8, dubbed the Typhoon, to inject serious muscle under the hood. The 343 Typhoon engine was a capable power plant, boasting a robust torque curve and respectable horsepower figures that placed it in competition with more established muscle cars. AMC engineers envisioned the Marlin 343 Typhoon as a car that could straddle the divide between luxury and performance, offering not just style and comfort, but also the kind of visceral, thrilling acceleration muscle car fans craved. Early prototype models paired the big V8 with a floor-shifted 4-speed manual transmission, adding an extra layer of driver engagement and sporty feel. This combination was designed to elevate the Marlin beyond its original market niche and attract younger, more performance-oriented customers. However, the project soon ran headlong into harsh technical realities. The Marlin's chassis and suspension architecture, which prioritized ride comfort and straight-line stability, was not engineered to cope with the increased power and torque output of the 343 Typhoon. Test drivers reported that the suspension components experienced excessive stress, leading to rapid wear and compromised handling. The front suspension geometry suffered under the engine's weight and force, causing alignment issues that negatively affected steering precision and vehicle stability, problems that became especially pronounced during spirited driving or at higher speeds. Overheating became another serious issue. The cooling system, designed for less powerful engines, struggled to dissipate the extra heat generated by the 343, raising concerns about long-term durability and reliability. Beyond engineering challenges, the project encountered deep internal resistance within AMC's corporate leadership. The company's brand identity had been carefully cultivated around practicality, economy, and value, a philosophy that resonated with a broad segment of buyers during the 1960s. Introducing a muscle car variant with a large displacement V8 engine risked alienating AMC's core customers and muddling the brand's marketing message. Executives feared that the Marlin 343 Typhoon would confuse consumers by straddling two very different segments without fully satisfying either. There was also a concern about the car's safety and drivability in the hands of everyday buyers, given the handling and cooling problems already evident in testing. After months of debate and technical evaluation, AMC made the difficult decision to cancel the Marlin 343 Typhoon project before it reached production. Prototypes were quietly retired, and the company returned its focus to refining the Marlin as a personal luxury car rather than chasing the muscle car market aggressively. This decision underscored the broader challenges AMC faced trying to compete against the muscle car titans of Detroit while maintaining its distinct identity and financial stability. The Marlin 343 Typhoon, while never officially released, left a lasting impression among enthusiasts and insiders. It represents a rare glimpse of AMC's willingness to explore the muscle car frontier, even if the company ultimately lacked the resources or appetite to fully commit to the segment. For many, the Marlin Typhoon symbolizes a fascinating what might have been, a car with the potential to have shaken up the muscle car scene by blending comfort and power in a way few others dared. One former AMC engineer who worked on the project recalled, "It was a fish out of water. Too much power for a chassis built for comfort. It had heart, but it just couldn't swim right." Today, the 1966 American Motors Marlin 343 Typhoon remains a rare and enigmatic footnote in muscle car lore, treasured by collectors and historians as a symbol of ambition tempered by reality. It serves as a poignant reminder of the tough balancing act automakers faced during the muscle car era, between pushing the limits of performance and staying true to brand identity, between engineering boldness and the practicalities of production. Number 12. The 1954 Chevrolet Handyman wagon equipped with the Corvette inline-six engine is a remarkable but largely forgotten example of early American automotive experimentation, a daring blend of performance and practicality that was ultimately too revolutionary for its own good. In the mid-1950s, Chevrolet's lineup was still deeply rooted in tradition. Cars and trucks designed primarily for everyday use, comfort, and reliability rather than speed or high performance. The Handyman wagon was a quintessential family and utility vehicle. Boxy, spacious, and dependable, built to haul passengers and cargo with efficiency rather than flair. Meanwhile, the Corvette was just beginning to make a name for itself as America's first true sports car, equipped with a spirited inline-six engine that, while modest by modern standards, offered a punchy, spirited drive relative to typical family vehicles. Against this backdrop, a small group of forward-thinking Chevrolet engineers sought to push boundaries and challenge assumptions about what a station wagon could be. They took a Corvette inline-six engine, upgraded with dual carburetors for better breathing and power output, and fitted it into the Handyman wagon's engine bay. This wasn't a simple swap. The engineers had to rework mounting points, adjust cooling systems, and fine-tune the wagon's heavier chassis and suspension to cope with the more spirited engine's performance demands. The result was a vehicle that could accelerate with surprising quickness, handle more responsively than any wagon of its time, and deliver a unique combination of everyday utility and genuine driving excitement. In testing, the Corvette-powered Handyman stunned drivers. It possessed an uncharacteristic zest for speed and agility, transforming the humble family wagon into something more akin to a sports car on wheels, at least in spirit. Drivers recalled the sensation of piloting a car that blended the practicality of a station wagon with the visceral thrill of a performance machine. It was a glimpse into a future where vehicles could be both functional and fun, a bridge between two worlds that rarely intersected in the 1950s automotive landscape. But while the engineers reveled in their creation, Chevrolet's executives saw only risk. The brand carefully positioned the Corvette as a unique, aspirational sports car intended to symbolize speed, exclusivity, and modern American performance. The idea of a practical, family-oriented wagon that could match or even exceed some Corvette performance figures threatened to blur market lines and undermine Corvette's image. Moreover, marketing concerns weighed heavily. The Handyman wagon's appeal was rooted in dependable, unflashy utility, and a high-performance version risked confusing consumers and alienating loyal buyers. Insurance concerns and potential liability over the wagon's unexpected performance in family use cases also factored into the decision. In the end, the corporate brass decided to pull the plug. The experimental Corvette-powered wagons were quietly recalled and dismantled, with all evidence of the project suppressed. Only a handful of insiders knew of the program's existence, and it quickly faded into obscurity, becoming an automotive urban legend among enthusiasts and historians. Decades later, engineers who had worked on the project fondly recalled the electric excitement of driving the wagon, joking that it was too cool for groceries. They lamented the lost opportunity to create a new segment of vehicles that could combine practicality and performance, a concept that would only be embraced decades later with the rise of sporty wagons and crossovers. Today, the 1954 Chevrolet Handyman wagon with the Corvette inline-six stands as a fascinating, what-could-have-been moment in American automotive history. It foreshadowed future trends by decades, illustrating early experimentation that dared to imagine family cars could also thrill behind the wheel. Though it never reached production, its story reminds us of the bold spirit and ingenuity lurking beneath the surface of mainstream American car manufacturing in the 1950s. A spirit often constrained by market caution and corporate conservatism. Too cool for groceries.